In this video, we're going to take a look at a segment of that interview that I talked about previously, and it has to do with why we're seeing aircraft point their nose up to the sky and just start launching rockets up into the air. All right, guys, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Thanks for stopping by. We're going to go ahead and start this interview video, take a look at the first part, look at some of the things that have to do with why they're firing rockets up into the air, and then we'll talk about why they're doing it, sort of break down into the context of what is actually going on.
Fire your rockets, then escape sideways. Hit and run GoPro footage provided to Scripps News by a Ukrainian Army helicopter pilot, Vadim, shows the daring maneuver he perfected over more than a year of combat missions.
Are you going into places where they could shoot you down?
Constantly. We don't have any tasks in which we don't get into enemy range. If you prepare well, study the landscape, the terrain, you can approach and they won't even see us.
All right, so we can see in the video, we can see in other videos, and I'll throw some up here as well, these aircraft pointing their nose up in the air. We've seen a lot of the Russians doing this really throughout the entire conflict. Aircraft on both sides, rolling in as fast as they can, pointing that nose up, firing rockets up into the air, and then diving out. So there's a couple things that's going on here. One is essentially what we're doing is we're indirectly firing those rockets. We're basically treating them like artillery. So there's a little bit of math that's been done, and we'll talk about that here in a second. And then we're pitching it back over and we're diving away. So obviously we're diving away to get away from the bad guys that we just shot at, but also we're trading that altitude that we gained for airspeed. So we've come in fast, we're trading that airspeed for altitude as we climb, we're pointing the nose up, we're firing the rockets, and now we're pushing it back over and we're diving back down, trading that altitude for airspeed so we can get away, push back, and probably come back in and do it again considering how many rockets a hip can carry. So you talk about being in range of the enemy. Absolutely. They're only getting about 6 kilometers of range. So depending on what they're shooting at, they may be very close to the front lines or to forward scouts, right? So if they're shooting at something that's maybe 3-4 kilometers behind the front lines, that means they got to get within about 2 kilometers of the front lines. At that point, you're definitely in front of a lot of bad guys that can shoot back at you.
The missile system is not state-of-the-art, requiring the pilot to point the helicopter in the target's direction and dial in the coordinates.
We receive the coordinates of the target in advance. We see if we can do it or not. If the risk is reasonable, then we take on the task, think over the entire route, ways to get out of there.
All right, so the missile system is not advanced, absolutely, because it's not a missile system. These are unguided rockets. There's absolutely no guidance systems on board. The guidance is that you're pointing. So it's essentially a bullet, or as I like to tell people, it's a giant bottle rocket. So you're pointing the rockets generally where you want them to go, and then you're letting them fly, and they're going to go where they're going to go. Now, there's some things that are going to impact the way that those rockets travel from point A to point B. A lot of it has to do with the wind, the overall conditions, the status of the aircraft, right? Is it moving forward or is it stationary? Is the rotor wash affecting it? Is there any yaw in the aircraft when it fires it through? There's a whole lot of things that go into firing rockets, and then when you're firing at this range, you're really having to rely on that pre-planning, and that's what it sounds like these guys are doing. So this is a huge change than what we're used to in the U.S. military for the past 20 plus years of doing the coin fight, where essentially you're taking off, you're looking for bad guys, and you're just dealing with things as they come. These guys are being told, hey, this is the target area. So he talks about you dialing in the coordinates. What they're doing is they're planning ahead. They're saying, okay, target is here. We are here. How can we get to a position where we have to shoot? Now, they may have, really advanced onboard navigation systems, so they figure out if we get to this grid coordinate or this lat long, we point in this direction, we elevate to this nose high angle, and we fire, then the rocket should, in theory, hit the target area. It could be something as simple as looking at a map and doing that math on the map and saying, okay, if we elevate at this angle, we're only going to get 6 kilometers out of the rockets, so we got to find something within 6 kilometers that we can use as a visual checkpoint, right? So as I fly over this bend in the road or this bridge or, whatever, that is my cue to pitch the nose up and fire, and that's going to get me where I'm at. Essentially, again, it goes back to what are we using these weapons for? They're aerial artillery. This is just another platform to fire large doses of high explosives at a target area. We're not particularly trying to hit 1 or 2 vehicles. We're trying to super saturate an area with explosives. And so if you've got 2 or 4 aircraft doing this, you're putting a lot of explosive energy down on the target in a relatively short period of time. But I think it's interesting to see them talk about the pre-planning and figuring out all the phases and figuring out how they're going to get from point A to point B tactically, how they're going to keep themselves safe, and then put themselves in a position to go ahead and affect the launching of all those rockets. I know it looks like it's indiscriminately just firing rockets. I've even seen some reports where it's talking about helicopters are trying to shoot down jets. That's not at all what's happening. This is actually a very standard practice with rotary wing aircraft. I practiced it in the Army. Obviously, the Russian military has practiced it quite a bit, it being kind of one of their design features or one of the things that they lean on based on the designs of their aircraft. This is a very standard practice with these types of munitions, and essentially all they're trying to do is push those rounds as far out as possible and do as much damage in an area. Now, again, depending on what you choose as a target, it could be problematic. And you know, what we've seen with some armies is they care a little bit less about what type of target they're shooting at than others. We in the U.S. military would not use this technique against, you know, a village or a city, something like that. You wouldn't be wanting to engage targets that are out in the open, like an artillery unit or some sort of resupply unit, or, you know, something that's stationary, but it's away from civilian areas, because those rockets, once they fire, those rockets are going to do what they're going to do. Some of them may not deploy properly. The wind may shift. You know, there's just any kind of things that could happen that could cause those rockets to fall off of course. Anyhow, I hope this video was helpful. Give you a little bit of context to what you've been seeing in the past year and a half with all the footage coming out of Ukraine. If you liked it, let me know in the comments below. Hit the like button. Again, subscribe if you can. I appreciate you guys watching, and we'll talk to you later. Take it easy.